Well, I'm glad that poor finales aren't just reserved for the TV series. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mr. TARDIS, and today we're going through some sort of a concluding chapter for the second Doctor Adventures from Big Finish. This is basically the brainchild of writers Nicholas Briggs and Mark Wright, to essentially canonise the Season 6B fan theory that the second Doctor was able to escape or survive his forced regeneration at the end of the War Games, and went on adventures and missions on behalf of the Time Lords along with Jamie. And through Big Finish, this has become the Beyond War Games story. Starring Michael Troughton as the second Doctor, we had Beyond War Games, James Robert McCrimmon, The Conspiracy of Raven, and now The Potential Daleks. And while from the outside you may look at this cover and think, oh, it's the second Doctor, you've got these Daleks here, this looks like a really cool adventure, this is not a jumping on point for the range. Absolutely not. In fact, listening to the behind the scenes interviews with Mark Wright and Nicholas Briggs, they consider this to be a direct follow-up from The Conspiracy of Raven, which was 6 episodes, effectively making this a 12-episode adventure. You do not want to jump into this halfway through that. No, if you want to get into this range, you're going to want to start at Beyond War Games and then take it from there. However, unfortunately, I think The Potential Daleks really dropped the ball as a finale. Not for lack of trying, but honestly, one big part of the issue here, and I'll acknowledge that it's a bit subjective, it's kind of my fault, this takes place directly after the events of Conspiracy of Raven, which came out a year and a half ago. I've listened to so much Big Finish and watched so much Doctor Who since Conspiracy of Raven. I have no idea what happened at the end of Conspiracy of Raven. I don't remember. So The Potential Daleks just tries to hit the ground running, but I've no idea what's going on. And it takes a lot of busy work to get audiences up to speed and basically clued in on what the Daleks' latest plot is. And I've listened to The Potential Daleks, and I'm still not entirely sure what the Daleks' plan was and why it was so complicated and whether or not it actually worked, because The Potential Daleks, as you can see from the cover, the blue and the silver designs from the classic series, and with the first story in the Beyond War Games story arc basically being a sequel to Evil of the Daleks with the final end, and the Daleks are wiped away from the universe thanks to the exploits of the Doctor, and the Daleks are trying to come back. We know that the Daleks do come back because obviously they did come back after Evil of the Daleks, but the way The Potential Daleks ends, did that happen? I've not got a clue. So what we effectively have with The Potential Daleks is an admirable attempt to fill in this gap in the Whoniverse chronology, but it just made me more confused. But anyway, I'm getting way off track here. The Potential Daleks has 3 stories across 6 episodes: Humpty Dumpty by Nicholas Briggs, Secret of the Daleks by Mark Wright, and War of the Morai by Mark Wright and Nicholas Briggs. So like I said, The Potential Daleks starts where Conspiracy of Raven ended, at the end of The Vanishing Point, which I don't remember anything about, and the TARDIS team consists of the second Doctor, an older Jamie, an older Zoe, and the CIA Time Lord agent Raven, and they're trying to scupper the Daleks' latest plan to essentially make Skaro appear at every point in existence in order to rebuild the Dalek forces. And the Doctor follows the trail to 2 concurrent events in 2 different time periods, one in 1877 and one in 1951. The Doctor and Jamie end up in the former, and Zoe and Raven wind up in the latter. In 1877, you've got this mother, Violet, played by Claire Corbett, and she has somehow invented the phonograph at the same time as Thomas Edison was meant to, and she's recorded herself singing the nursery rhyme Humpty Dumpty in order to calm her baby. However, the baby, now all grown up in 1951, is using this nursery rhyme, and a tunnel is bridging 1877 and 1951, and the Daleks somehow want to use that in order to break into reality.
But what is the connection between these Kipper things and the home planet of the Daleks materialising all over the universe?
Ah, yes, well, I have a theory about that.
Well, are you going to tell us about it or not, Doctor?
Yes. Yes, I suppose I should.
Yes, you should.
You see, I think these so-called Kippers are, well, sort of,
Sort of what?
potential Daleks.
Potential Daleks?
Yes.
What are you talking about, Doctor?
You mean they are Daleks trying to push themselves back into reality after having been wiped out.
Precisely, Zoe.
That's just insane.
If it's insane to challenge the laws of time, to try to rewrite history, to conquer the universe, yes, then it is insane. But should we expect anything less from the Daleks? Creatures who never admit defeat? Who always come back to menace? To invade? To exterminate?
Humpty Dumpty is a cool idea and concept. You know, you get this really creepy idea of using a child's nursery rhyme as some sort of weird backdoor in order to allow the Daleks back into the universe again. However, that's kind of all that the episode is. There is some decent character stuff there. I think that in 1951, Zoe and Raven make a pretty inspired pairing, because Raven considers herself to be an intellectual superior and how she's always looking down on the Doctor and Jamie. And then you introduce Zoe into the dynamic and she thinks, like, begrudgingly, I have an intellectual equal here, and she doesn't really know what to do with that, and I really liked that dynamic. I think Wendy Padbury and Emma Noakes had a really great interplay with each other. Emma Noakes is basically the MVP performer of the entire Beyond Wargames story, and she's great here as well. That continues here. And randomly enough, you've got a character here called Celestin, played by Nicholas Briggs, who is pretending to be a doctor who looks after this baby who's all grown up in 1951 and is basically part of the Humpty Dumpty plot. And I had no idea who this character was, and it turns out that he's a character from the Beyond Wargames box set. Need I remind you, Beyond Wargames came out nearly 4 years ago. I don't remember this guy. So when Nicholas Briggs turns up as Celestin and I'm meant to remember him, I either release these way quicker or make him more prominent. You can't have this release schedule and bury the lead that much. But anyway, one big thing holding Humpty Dumpty back is that it has to spend the first 10 to 15 minutes of the story basically wrapping up the events of the last box set, meaning that Humpty Dumpty in and of itself can't really work as a standalone story. And admittedly, it's not trying to be that. It is definitely piggybacking off the last box set, but it just means that the pacing's all over the shop. And while there is a really cool Jamie character beat at the end of the story where he just really goes to show that he would ride or die for the second Doctor. He would do anything for this incarnation, this guy, because he really has very little else to live for, even despite the life that he's lived over the past few decades in the absence of this Doctor and the memory of all of these adventures. Apart from that, Jamie really has nothing to do over the course of these 6 episodes. This is basically Zoe Herriot's story, which is really cool, but I don't think that this story has done enough to justify reuniting this TARDIS trio. That's not to say that there haven't been good stories to come out of this TARDIS team and being reunited. I think that The Green Man by Paul F. Verhoeven in the James Robert McCrimmon box set is the obvious high watermark for this whole range, and that's a brilliant second Doctor and Jamie story. But in terms of going to this amount of effort and this amount of time to reunite this original TARDIS trio, I really hope they'd have more to do in what's basically meant to be a culminating chapter. But anyway, the next story is Secret of the Daleks by Mark Wright, where the Daleks have returned, or have they, ? They follow the Daleks' trail to this mysterious tropical world, and the Doctor, Jamie, Zoe and Raven end up assimilating with this native population, to the extent where there's a really strange 3-week time skip, which adds nothing to the story and just immediately guts the urgency. Like, oh, the Daleks are coming back. Oh, 3-week time skip. What have we done during that time? Nothing. Like, why is this here? However, of course, things start going wrong. The Daleks turn up, and with part 2 of the story, we get some really fun body-swapping antics, which I won't really get into because of spoilers, and I think the surprise of it is a big part of the appeal. And clearly Michael Troughton is having an awful lot of fun with this. And while Nicholas Briggs is giving a great performance as the reborn Dalek Emperor, is he a reborn Dalek Emperor? Is he mobile? Like, because I think the Doctor describes him as a bit smaller than the original version, but is he still locked in place? The fact that I have no sense of actual place for the main antagonist of the box set, I think is a big issue. But yeah, body swapping happens and then the story ends. I'm really trying here, folks. There's just nothing really else to talk about in Secret of the Daleks. There's I'm kind of at a loss. Like you've gone to so much effort to canonize season 6B. You've gone to so much effort to reunite the Second Doctor and the Daleks and bring them back from their supposed final end. You've got a really big TARDIS team. The Second Doctor, an older Jamie, an older Zoe, and another Time Lord called Raven, who's a really fascinating character. And I've nothing to talk about. What has happened here? Which leads us now into the concluding chapter, War of the Morai, by Mark Wright and Nicholas Briggs. Now, the Morai were the creatures that were in the Conspiracy of Raven box set in the Vanishing Point. They return to the Vanishing Point because the Daleks want to use the Vanishing Point, but because that box set came out a year and a half ago, I don't remember what the Vanishing Point does. But anyway, the Daleks are trying to utilize the power of the Vanishing Point, and they're trying to wipe out the Morai, but the Morai have hidden themselves behind an impregnable barrier. A barrier, spoiler warning I guess, but it's got to be mentioned, a barrier that the Morai later use as a weapon, and it's like, why didn't the Morai do that in the first place? They knew they could, they just didn't, because then there's no story. But here's something I really want to be crystal clear about. I don't remember much about the Kippers that were in the Conspiracy of Raven. I don't remember much about the Morai or the Vanishing Point. There's a couple of points in War of the Morai where they're reunited with a character from a previous story, and I just have to take the box set's word for it that they've met before. I just didn't remember it. I'm so sorry. But I will give the box set, The Potential Daleks, the benefit of the doubt. I will give the benefit of the doubt that everything adds up completely logistically, that everything makes sense in the broader context of these 12 episodes. I care way more about character and theme. And on that front, The Potential Daleks is basically a void. There's nothing about the Second Doctor potentially meddling with the destiny of the Daleks by bringing about their final end in Evil of the Daleks. There's nothing about the teaming up of the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe that requires this specific trio to save the universe, or even a potential redemption or a changing of an allegiance for Raven. The closest thing that The Potential Daleks has to an overarching theme is that if you can fight the Daleks, you should fight them, which is fine. I appreciate that message, but did you really need 12 episodes to get that across? The Potential Daleks is a decent box set for Zoe, but Jamie is once again a complete spare part in this story. I don't really care about the Morai or the family dilemma at the heart of the story, and I also think that Michael Troughton doesn't have that much fun material to work with here, with the exception of the body swapping stuff in the second story. And I also think that while Mark Wright and Nicholas Briggs have done a really good job of writing the Second Doctor in previous box sets and in previous stories, in The Potential Daleks, the Second Doctor feels a little bit flanderized. Like, every single sentence starts or ends with, "Oh dear, oh my giddy aunt." But yes, he said these things in the TV series. He also said an awful lot more. He has way more variety in his vocabulary than "oh my giddy aunt" and "oh dear." And Michael Troughton in the past has given way more in terms of a performance to his version of the character than Nicholas Briggs and Mark Wright are giving him here. They're regressing him as a character. Like, I think back to the ending monologue of, was it The Green Man or The Shroud? But there's a brilliant monologue with the Second Doctor in this box set where he's going toe-to-toe with Raven, and I thought that that was the moment that Michael Troughton really arrived as the Second Doctor in Big Finish. But there hasn't really been a moment to rival that since, because unfortunately it seems that Mark Wright and Nicholas Briggs just want to trap this version of the character and kind of not make him move on. And I understand that's kind of partially the point with season 6B. He is trapped between War Games and Spearhead from Space. But there's no, like, metatextual commentary about that here. There's not really any sort of lip service to it. It's just more of the Second Doctor, and we're not going to do anything else. In fact, we are just going to have him say the exact same things and the exact same catchphrases in the past, even though his companions are meant to have aged and moved on, but there's not anything about that. I don't know what the mission statement for this is anymore. I understood the mission statement at the start. Okay, you're going to bring back the second Doctor. Can I season 6B? Okay, Raven thinks he works better with companions, so he's going to reunite with Jamie. Zoe's going to get introduced as well, and then they're going to fight the Daleks again. Like, but to what end? What story do you want to tell? What character details do you want to explore or elaborate on or flesh out? Like, I don't get what the project is anymore. Thankfully, the Potential Daleks does end on another cliffhanger, and we are getting another Second Doctor Adventure story in August, so thankfully we don't have to wait a year and a half until the next one, but honestly, the Potential Daleks, a really poor showing. I thought it is just 6 episodes of running around and really obfuscating any sort of idea of theme or characterization. Like there's really nothing here. And like I understand that maybe I should have listened to Conspiracy of Raven before diving into the Potential Daleks. I'll admit that is my problem. But like I said, I'm going to ignore the logistics of the story and all the setup and stuff. I really want to focus on character and theme and performance and the writing, and the Potential Daleks just doesn't really give me anything. It's kind of empty, and that's a really massive shame for a range that started off with such great promise. Hopefully the Second Doctor Adventures can redeem itself moving forward. My fingers are firmly crossed for it, because I really do like Michael Troughton in this role, and I think there is great potential for this range. But in the behind-the-scenes interviews, Mark Wright says that he's moving away from the range, and like, you know, no disrespect to Mark Wright, but you know, I don't think he and Nicholas Briggs have much to say about the Second Doctor anymore. So I really hope that we do get a more interesting creative team for the Second Doctor moving forward. But anyway, that was my review of the Second Doctor Adventures, The Potential Daleks. What did you folks think of it? Let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe for more Big Finish reviews, hit the like button, all that good stuff. And folks, I'll see you all next time.